سلام کلایی هستم و به اولین مصاحبه روز جدید خوش آمدید. مصاحبه امروز به انگلیسی با زیرنویس فارسی با هنرمند جهانگرد و استاد هنر جیسون کوفکی خواهد بود. پیشاپیش این رو میگم که واضح هست که لهجه‌ای دارم به خاطر زبان فارسی زبانیه که یاد گرفتم و هنوز در واقع یاد میگیرم. بنابراین در آینده امیدوارم یکی از دوستان عزیزم که زبان مادریش زبان فارسی بتونه با من در انجام مصاحبه همراه بشه. خب. So Jason, we're going to start. I was telling our listeners, our viewers, a little about myself, what Ruzeh Jadid is, and that in the future we will have some interviews also in Farsi and other languages with captions in English or other languages for everyone to take part in and enjoy. So, and that's kind of, this is why I asked you to do this interview, because I've known you for a while. And I really respect you just as a person. I respect your work. I loved your, so I want to start off first. We'll go back in time, and I want to, for everyone who is creative out there, I want you to explain your art process. Like early in life, we begin creating, and then at some point in our life, we make the connection between what we're doing creatively is art. So for you, when did that happen, and what were you making, and how did that change?
Right. That respect is mutual. I feel the same way about you as a creative and as a person beyond that. So it's been nice to share the years. If we're not seeing each other that often, we at least, like, you're at least, you know, an email or a call or a message away. So yeah, that feels close enough. This is a good question, and it's a difficult question because you really, as any creative could understand, and probably anybody who tries to remember aspects of childhood, you really are peeling through the layers of yourself to get back to the core of who you were as a child when you were experiencing things for the first time. And that's difficult, I think, because my mind is an adult mind now that's translating a child's mind. And, you know, we think and are different people when we're younger. So that's the reason it's difficult. And it was challenging to go back to what those first creative acts and thoughts were. And I think I have some mildly unique experiences. For one, I was dyslexic. So
oh, I didn't know that. Wow.
Yeah. And I noticed that other people noticed I was doing things wrong when we were trying to write words or letters. I was doodling or drawing. And I remember the other students and the teacher saying that that's not correct, but I enjoyed what I was making. I was bored. I remember feeling the emotion of being bored, drawing the same thing over and over again, the same letters. Yeah. So I was just doodling. And I remember thinking it was more efficient if I just drew little pictures of what I was trying to express rather than all of these stupid abstract marks that are hard to remember. And that's the first time I noticed that I had a propensity maybe to seeing something different, or just a lack of interest of wanting to learn the language, the written language. But that also kind of trapped me because I then relied on that more and more, and people started using that term, oh, you're an artist, oh, you're drawings and art. Before I may have known what it was formally. Yeah. And then I took on that identity before I could even remember making the choice. It wasn't something I discovered. It's not something I can separate because I don't have a memory before that.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's almost like art was your language from a very early stage. Like your drawing for you, it was your attempt at, it was what the language that made sense to you. So instead of trying to understand how do I make these letters correct for you, you were like, well, this is what makes sense to me. This is how I communicate visually.
Right. Yep. And my mom and Dad said that I had my own language that they still made fun of me about. Like I called the beach the goby. A dog was the yo-yo. I had my own words, apparently. I mean, I don't remember this, but I imagine every human being at some point in their transition into becoming an adult or even like an older child is developing language skills. So somewhere mine kicked in and went haywire. And I think that led to some of the drawings and relying on drawing and visuals as a reliance of language.
Yeah, that's great. So I want to talk about specifically. I want to talk about your work. Everything will be okay. Well, actually, okay. So let me say this first. As you did painting, I got to know you in your painting phase, which then evolved into printmaking, which I think you're very much involved in still. And then it evolved into street art with the Everything Will Be Okay series. And then I saw you many years later, and I noticed, I was so impressed because you had translated Everything Will Be Okay in multiple languages. You had stickers made in multiple languages, and it was a way for everyone to not only participate in the street art, but also participate in this message and edit this message or add to this message. Can you talk a little bit about your decision to move from painting then to printmaking, and then how that influenced with the street art that you were doing?
Right. Good question. So it's a twofold answer. The easy answer is with my kind of reliance on drawing throughout my childhood, I wound up majoring in comic books. And while I was studying sequential art, I guess the formal degree of that, I got influenced by print and print technologies, as well as just painting, which was the first time I was experiencing a fine art or the fine arts or expressing for abstract mark making. And that opened up a whole new sense of creativity. So I really went in toward painting, stepping away from more graphic arts and design and formal drawing techniques. And then that somehow full circled into language, because it's kind of rekindling everything that we were just talking about with childhood, this cycle of, well, what is language? What is a message? How am I transferring the message? And eventually I didn't need the images anymore. I could just use the words themselves because it was more efficient, and it did what I wanted to cause. It caused what I wanted from the viewer. It caused them to stop for a moment when they encounter that phrase, that polarizing phrase, everything will be okay. And it causes them to take stock of how they view the world in that moment of their life and where they're at. And they ultimately decide to reject it or believe it. And that's really what we want with every poem we write or picture we take or film that we screen. Any creative act, you're asking a viewer to make sense of the world that they're in and to connect with it. So my most efficient path was just that phrase. And translating it into multiple languages basically allowed me to hide that phrase as a street art project in different urban centers around the world, anticipating, and this is the unfortunate thing, anticipating that tragedy, hubris that causes disaster, these things are inevitable. They're a repeating pattern. And if I can, if I can anticipate that, if I can place something that nullifies the effect of a tragedy, of a disaster, or of a stressful moment, just on an individual level where somebody sees that and has a moment within themselves, then that's all I'd ever asked for out of a career of the arts. So hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, it totally makes sense. Yeah, that was good. And talk a little bit about how you travel a lot. So do you feel like in right now you are actually living in Italy and working for, can you introduce the name of your school you're working for?
Sure, I'll say it with a thick Italian accent. It's a Santa Reparata International School of Art, or the Holy Repentance, which is only the street name that it's on. It's the only reason. But it's a school for English-speaking students to experience Florence and the art history of the Renaissance. So it's a perfect place for me to be.
Amazing. And how has I know you've been there a short while, but how has travel in general? I know you've traveled around the world. How has travel influenced your artwork? Have you added any of those styles into your work? Have you added any of those cultures, techniques into your work?
Yes, but I wouldn't say it's immediate. It's just like we were talking about. It's kind of like learning a language. It's absorbing the visual aesthetics over a period of time. So my first travel, I think you probably remember, was China, and that was an opportunity that opened up as an art residency. I really had no plan to do that. I had no idea what to expect, but after spending a year in China and learning, I wouldn't say a painting style, but I would say an entirely different way of expressing what you experience through visuals. That's I felt after like learning some of the Chinese history, language, and art style that I had needed an entirely new lifetime to take all this in. It was so dense and so much. But that sense of adventure and that sense of magic that was rekindled through throwing myself into another culture, I just wanted more of it. So I ended up applying to similar projects in Japan, and since have been able to travel to Japan, Spain, France, Mauritania, and Africa, through South America and Central America, and all through Europe. And it's part my family lineage, but Italy feels like home. So it's also a really convenient airport for all these other parts of the world and Europe. So I left the US for the first time when I was 30. And by the time I was 40, I looked back and realized I'd been traveling for the past 10 years. And now in my 40s, I've decided I'm just going to make a life of being an expat, basically, and absorbing as much of other aspects of the world as I can.
Amazing. So just to wrap it up, do you want to talk to us about anything you have going on in the future? I don't know if you have any shows, if you have any new projects. Could you just talk a little bit about that, if there's anything on the horizon that you're looking forward to?
Yeah. I think the trade-off with expanding your horizons and vision of other aspects of the world is that it is actually taken from my artwork. I have a real difficulty going into a printmaking studio if I'm in China or if I'm in the south of France. I want to go have an espresso or have some wine with friends. So I found that I need to have enough time in a place that I need to become bored, and then I'll start trying to entertain myself with artwork. And I am not there yet with Italy. I am still like a tourist and still going on adventures. Yeah. So it's pretty slow, but I do have a pretty exciting commission that I guess I'll get to announce here. I'm going to be doing drawings for a hallway at a new office. And I'm not supposed to talk about it, I think, but I can tell you that it's generally a company that often sends rockets into space, and it's also a really great fit for me. So yeah, I'm excited to be working for them and doing some prints for them. But aside from that, that'll be like an art project I have to get done. Just teaching students and exposing Americans that are young and at a formative time of their life, exposing them to Europe, to Italy, and to their first abroad experience. Again, I couldn't be in a better place.
That's amazing, Jason. I'm so proud of you, and thank you so much for being willing to do this with me. This has also been a difficult work for me and my friends who are involved to start. also your willingness to take part in this conversation of language exchange and creativity. It means a lot to me. I really appreciate it. So thank you.
Well, I'm honored. Yeah.
And I'm sure I'll be talking to you soon.